Hi, this is Beth Drucker, and with my colleague Kim Stone, we're about to start the May 2024 Go Green Illinois meeting. The topic is how to establish or enhance food composting programs in your community and inspire people to use them. But we are going to start with an overview of the new Priority Climate Action Plan in Wilmette, or in Chicagoland in the region. We're pleased to have Edith Makra and Nora Beck here from the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. And so with that, I will turn the meeting over to Edith Makra. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Beth and Kim. And thank you to everyone for being here. Does it sound okay? And screen share. I just did it. Yep.
It's not in presenter mode yet. There we go.
Okay, that looks great. Thumbs up. Okay, excellent. So I'm Edith Makra. I'm Environment Director for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, and I am thrilled to be back at the Go Green meetings. You guys always inspire me, and I love just seeing the energy and the creativity and the diversity of communities here. I am thrilled to bring with me Nora Beck, who is a partner on the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant project that we're doing and co-presenter on this. So Nora, if you want to say hi, and I'll start, but turn it over to her, Nora, or later. Sorry.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. Excellent. So Nora Beck and I are working on the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, and I'm going to give you an overview. I think you're going to have a really good time with the composting topics. This is really important work, high level, and I want you to kind of take away the fact that there's a lot happening. This is really super encouraging and exciting work. So again, partnership with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and CMAP, working on this. The Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is a program that comes out of the Inflation Reduction Act, and it is the largest single investment in climate action ever. That means US and abroad. This is an enormous opportunity to make a huge difference in climate. And I'm going to brag on the US EPA and then all of us partners who pulled this off, because it was really pretty incredible. It is also the first time that the federal government and all those who work with them, including states and regions, have really focused on environmental justice and equity in such a foundational way. So this is implementation of the Biden administration's Justice 40 initiative. And so this is reflecting of the intention of the Biden administration to see that 40% of certain federal benefits flow to benefit those communities who have previously and historically been impacted, as you'll often hear in the climate world, first and worst by climate change. The project in this $4.3 billion investment comes into major phases. And phase one is the planning, which we finished one part of it, and then phase two is the implementation, which is underway. Both of these projects move really, really quickly. Again, lots of money. And I won't go into details of how they're split, but if you can appreciate the breadth of planning, this project was announced last spring, and then states and metropolitan statistical areas, which we'll refer to as MSAs, were all given an opportunity for what we call formula grants. And in the grant world, formula means it's non-competitive. So every state, all 50 states were offered a $3 million grant as an opportunity to participate in the climate pollution reduction grants. The gray states turned the funding down. The largest 67 metropolitan statistical areas were then supposed to get money, but because there was money on the table from some of these other states, it rejiggered, and there were a total of 81 MSAs across the US that were offered funding and completed the planning. So now the talking point for the US EPA, which is phenomenal, is that 96% of the US population is under some kind of a climate action plan. And this goes back to last June was when Nora and I first started negotiations on this. So incredibly quick turnaround for such a breadth of climate action planning. The Priority Climate Action Plan, which I'll get into, is very rudimentary, but one of the things the US EPA had to do to make this all work is they streamlined the process into bite-sized tasks. They're not exactly bite-sized, they're big bites, but they were done. And they focused on just climate mitigation. So anybody wonky that wants to get into policy can talk to me offline about why they're called climate pollution reduction grants and what the US EPA can do, but it's focused on climate mitigation. climate adaptation. They also gave us a structure to the plan, and there really was a basic template for the Priority Climate Action Plan, which really allowed newcomers as well as groups like the Mayor's Caucus that has done this before to move through it quickly, and then it allows US EPA and all the other stakeholders to move through the plans with some consistency. So the timeline, as I said, really insane. It was 8 months. It was even shorter from the time we actually got our funding agreement. We had 3 months really to get our Priority Climate Action Plan done. They wanted stakeholder engagement. We did our best with it, but that was incredibly rushed. And the reason for it is called a Priority Climate Action Plan because they wanted to enable thoughtful applications for the $4.3 billion in implementation money. So really the purpose of the Priority Climate Action Plan was to enable those states and regions, stakeholders in those states and regions, to put in thoughtful applications to mitigate climate pollution very, very quickly, reduce greenhouse gas emissions very quickly. What's the fastest, most effective, most equitable thing that you can do in your state or region to reduce emissions? And that was really where we're at right now. So Priority Climate Action Plan, or PCAP, what can we do quickly? The CPRG implementation grant applications were due April 1st, and they had to build on the Priority Climate Action Plan. So there was a close connection between those two major work products. The next one, which we have a little more time to breathe, although Nora is going to argue about that. It feels like it's incredibly rushed. But the comprehensive climate action plan is going to be more thoughtful. There's going to be a robust stakeholder engagement process and broader for a little more time to stop and build on the work that we've done and have a really long, enduring, impactful climate action plan for a period of time. And then the implementation projects that will be funded by this CPRG grants, they're about 5 years to complete those. So the applications that went in April 1st, they're supposed to be on contract in October of this year, so it'd be 5 years for implementation. And there's some interim steps in the process that are more detailed than you need right now. Some of you who've been in Go Green webinars before have heard me talk about the Climate Action Plan for the Chicago region. So Councilwoman Stone was part of the launch for this event. We had a lot of great stakeholder input in our climate action plan for the Chicago region. So this was the first in 2021. It was only the third in the US. This was really pioneering just a couple of years ago, and it feels really good, I guess, to be replaced already and to see this kind of breadth and action across the United States. So the differences in the plan, and I'm waiting for somebody to catch the puns with you'll see the cover here in a minute. But our climate action plan was mitigation and adaptation and rooted in equity. The unique part of our plan, because this was driven by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and we partnered with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, was that all of this was tailored for municipal action. So the pivot in the plan was about what municipalities and local governments can do to lead, encourage, and enact climate action. Then the Priority Climate Action Plan, see how the sun is rising? I'll go back and show you that. So early morning, sun rising, Nora's Climate Action Plan is going to be bright daylight there. But the plan necessarily, from the EPA standpoint, had to expand. So it first started with, let's remove that municipal filter. So this isn't just for municipalities, because the greatest source of emissions, which Nora will give you just a little snapshot of, don't just come from things under municipal control. So we looked at high sources of emissions, like in our region, freight, in industry, that hadn't really been addressed in the previous climate action plan. As I said, this prioritized strategies, so it's selected from the previous plan the most impactful strategies and builds on those. There were low-income communities identified as per the Justice 40 initiative. And then most interesting for Nora and I working on this was the definition of the area, the region, as an MSA. It's a metropolitan statistical area. And that is not a definition that we picked. This comes to us from the Census Bureau. And so we were working with Wisconsin and Indiana. So it was a big region, a lot of diversity and capacity and in terms of emissions. And then the other really interesting thing here, and then CMAP did the analysis for the PCAP here, was the examination of the low income and disadvantaged communities. And there's a lot of tools that we can use as advocates here and planners, this combined a couple of tools is probably the most sophisticated analysis of our first and worst communities. And I want you to look at those. So the pink areas on the map are low-income and disadvantaged communities, and there's some surprises there, some that are not surprising. We certainly expected the southern part of our region to be highly impactful, but look at Newton County in Indiana. Really interesting that the whole county is considered low-income disadvantaged community. And then some interesting sprinkling of LIDAC communities throughout the region. And then next step, which was very quickly after the PCAP was done, was the implementation grants. So again, CMAP did a really good job of trying to connect with other partners. While I was nose to grindstone getting the PCAP done, there was an opportunity to try to coordinate applications for all those stakeholders in the region that wanted to put in funding and seek grant money for implementation. We had to make sure not only that we heard from them, but whatever they wanted to apply for had to be in the PCAP. So really, they had to think ahead, required close coordination, because if a strategy wasn't in the PCAP, they couldn't apply for it. There was also a modeling exercise so that we could demonstrate to the US EPA why these particular strategies in these applications from these partners were going to be impactful and how impactful. So I'll let you read them, but the coalitions that came together, the grants were also enormous. The smallest grant was $2 million. The largest was $500 million. So again, large, sweeping, transformative projects was what US EPA was aiming for. So there was a coalition of small communities that were led by Kane County for a whole diversity of capital projects and some educational programs. Kane County and City of Chicago came together with a food waste biodigester. So that was exciting to this group who wants to hear more about that. And then a neat focus on industrial emissions. There was a nifty project with a handful of 10 wastewater agencies, maybe it was 12, from that wanted to get together and capture methane gases that had previously been flaring and convert that to renewable natural gas for energy to be converted back into pipeline gas. The RTA got together and under their various service boards, CTA and Makra and PACE came in with a very broad transit electrification proposal. And then again, interesting to this group, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, my own project here, we proposed a project for landscape equipment electrification. This is dovetailing with some of the issues that North Shore communities have had, other communities have as well around leaf blowers. But we looked at the pollution component and the fuel consumption component to it. And then just a nod to Nora and I have been coordinating with the Illinois EPA. And so they had a more rushed process than we did. They didn't have a wide stakeholder engagement process, but they did do some communication about it. And again, in talking with them and doing some pre-planning, they put together a huge $500 million project with a lot of things, pardon the typo in my slide, I just got it, related to pass-through money and planning projects. And I would have to say, if those of you who know CEJA really well, it looks like a lot of, CEJA expansion is what those projects look like. And that's judgment on my part, but those are the kinds of things that we're seeing in those proposals. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nora to finish it up.
Yeah, thanks everyone. My first time on your series here, so appreciate the opportunity. I'm Nora Beck. I'm a principal policy analyst in our policy division of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. If you're not familiar with us, we are the regional planning agency and the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the 7 counties of Northeastern Illinois. And as Edith was explaining, we have been in partnership on this US EPA program. And part of that is CMAP taking a lead on the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, which is our next planning deliverable through this program. So this plan has a lot of guidelines that are established through the US EPA. We need to be able to identify solutions or strategies that address all the significant sources and sinks of greenhouse gas emissions in this 14-county MSA region. We need to be able to estimate the GHG reductions from those strategies and then develop implementation targets demonstrating how the region will meet those national goals of 50% reduction in emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And then along the way, we also need to quantify the co-benefits of implementing the plan. both in terms of other air quality improvements, as well as co-benefits to impacted communities, as Edith identified in a couple of slides ago. So while we're doing this, the state of Illinois, as well as Wisconsin and Indiana, will also be developing their own state-level comprehensive climate action plans. And so we anticipate coordinating with them on those policies and engagement and the plan development in general. And last but not least, we have roughly 15 months before this plan is due to the US EPA in July of 2025. Unlike the PCAP, the CCAP will lay out that longer term strategy, but it's not directly connected to a funding source like the PCAP was. So we're hopeful that by going through this exercise, the federal government will choose or select to help us fund these projects that we identify in the future. Next slide, Edith. So I think we did want to take a moment to just reflect on all the sectors that need to be covered by the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan to be truly comprehensive and then meet the goals of the US EPA program. So we're going to literally have to talk about everything in this plan development process, and we're going to have to work with an array of partners across a much larger geography than what Edith and I are typically used to. And as I'm sure that you all are aware, these solutions are going to be hard, and they have the potential to impact every resident, business, jurisdiction. So we're really hoping to build a planning process that works with everyone and pulls in the input to make sure that we design these strategies in a way that will work and will be feasible. While we know that this will be challenging, it also presents a critical opportunity. Many of the strategies to reduce emissions have great co-benefits, such as cleaning our air, making our streets safer, building communities that are healthier, more active, providing better access to job centers, cutting energy and transportation costs for residents. So a lot of these goals have been at the core of CMAP's regional vision, and now the climate crisis is giving us added weight and urgency to implement them. As Edith mentioned, I did want to talk about the GHG emissions that we found through this process. So next slide, Edith. Yeah, so we had to develop a greenhouse gas inventory for this much larger geography. You may know that CMAP has been regularly producing a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the 7-county area. But we needed to expand that to the 14 counties in the MSA and discovered that we were producing approximately 160 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That number is sort of hard to comprehend. So I'm hopeful that some of you have done your own GHG assessments of your municipalities or your counties and could help us put that number in perspective. The inventory reveals that we have a prominent emission sector, the building sector, which comprises both residential and commercial buildings. It's about 42% of our emissions. And then we have industrial and transportation, which combined cover over 50% of our emissions. And given how important a role our region plays in national transportation and manufacturing, it's easy to see how these economic drivers produce GHG emissions and make the region a major contributor to our national total greenhouse gas output. In the next slide, we've broken this greenhouse gas inventory out into, oh, whoops, Edith, maybe we don't have the right slide deck.
I'm gonna look for the other deck. Keep talking. I'll see if I can find it.
I have it open actually. Would that help?
Why don't you? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, bear with us just a second. Let's see.
Ladies, I'm afraid we're going to have to ask you to wrap up so that all the speakers have. So if you could just wrap up, then the other speakers have their allotted time.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, well, thanks for your time. We have more information about the greenhouse gas inventory, and we're hoping to engage you in another session like this where we can start talking about the GHG reduction strategies. So thanks again.
Great. Thank you so much. I always hate to stop any speakers because we all have more to say than anyone is given time for. But with that, we're now going to, if you have specific questions for Edith or Nora, please put them in the chat and they can direct message you about it. And we're going to now start our composting segment. And we are starting with Jen Nelson. She's the director, 7 Generations Ahead, board member, co-chair, education committee of the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition. So thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here too. Let me make sure I'm opening the right window to share my presentation, but good afternoon. And I'm so glad you could introduce me since I failed to send you my bio. But I do want to just say that in addition to being a founding board member and the Education Committee Chair of the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition, which is the hat I'm wearing while I'm presenting to you, I'm also a Brookfield Conservation Commissioner and part of Go Green Brookfield, which right now is an online group as opposed to actually getting together, but building. And then I work for 7 Generations Ahead, a local environmental nonprofit building healthy and sustainable communities. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if it's coming through to you. But today I'm going to talk about what we're doing with composting in Illinois, where we stand right now, what's changed in the last year since I came and presented a year ago about, and it really has, things have changed a lot. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm sharing. I know many of you that were on the line participated in, heard about, were part of International Compost Awareness Week that just happened this past week. Come to the next Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition meeting to learn about like 50 plus events that happened across the state, introducing people to compost, how to compost food scraps, the use of finished compost. And then what I want to talk about right now, though, is taking the conversation on the climate action plan and looking at what that connection is between composting and climate action, because I think while transportation and other areas have been listed as significant ways to impact the climate, I think food waste, reducing wasted food, is another big one, and composting is a part of that process. So just a reminder that wasted food is 21% of the material that gets sent to landfills. And when wasted food is in landfills, it creates methane, a greenhouse gas that's much more potent than carbon dioxide. And when food waste is composted, it's not creating that methane because it has access to air and the other things that are helping it to decompose in a much better way for the planet. When we're releasing methane from landfills, that is part of what's causing greenhouse gases, which blanket our planet. You can see in the image there, but basically when the sun's energy comes down and it hits the earth, it's supposed to bounce back out. But if we have too much methane in the atmosphere, it creates almost like a roof around the planet, keeping all of that heat in, and that's what causes global warming. And what we're concerned about is the global warming that's happening because of human activities. And that's what we're calling, that's what's leading to the climate crisis. I did want to share that, so food waste is the single largest material that's sent to landfills, which I think not only is horrible, but is also an opportunity for us to be able to make a difference in each of our communities. ReFed recently released new data. ReFed's a national organization working to reduce wasted food. And they have new data that is talking about the food system's connection, not only to greenhouse gas emissions, but looking at what we're putting into our landfills that are filling up, the use of cropland, and looking at freshwater use. I'd encourage you to check out ReFed's website if you want some really good just informational bites that would help you in having conversations about why this is important. Those of you, Project Drawdown is a group of international scientists that came together to identify solutions to reverse global warming. And you don't need to be able to see all of the details on this slide. That's why I did the big blue #1 in there, but reduced food waste is the #1 solution that we can be working on. It's amazing. And then there are a bunch of other food system ones that are on that list as well. But so I take that, it's the #1 solution. And then ReFed also shared what are some of the most impactful food waste solutions. And right there, #3 on their list is centralized composting. And that's what we're talking about today, is the role composting can play as a solution to the climate crisis. Let me know if you can hear this okay.
According to Project Drawdown, the #1 best solution an individual can take to reverse global warming is to reduce food waste. This means only buy enough food of what you can eat. We can all take the simple step to make a huge impact on our world. After that, the next best solution.
Sound isn't connected.
Compost.
No?
Composting reduces the amount of methane emissions.
It is connected, so I'll just go ahead and tell you, and I'll share a link to this later, but basically it's a short minute-long bite on the connections and how we can be making a difference. So I'll happily share the video link for people to see later, because I know we're short on time. One of the things that's exciting is I happen to know the filmmaker, and it's my daughter whose film on food waste screened at the Colorado Environmental Film Festival, and really gets down to how this is something that we can all easily be playing a part of. So I have talked a little bit before about, I've mentioned the impact on landfills, but I really like to talk about the fact that this is so critical for our soil. When you think about Illinois as a state that both has, big ag crops, but also have small farmers that are growing and locally producing food for us. We have an increased push for having community gardens. These are all areas that we're growing food, we should be looking at the health of that soil, and using finished compost is one of the easiest ways to bring microorganisms back into the soil. It improves soil structure and water retention. So all of you who have had any flooding in your streets, in your basements, in your yards recently, if you are applying compost on your lawn, it's going to improve the soil structure and water retention and reduce the need for flooding. I wanted to just share, backyard composting is not, we do have a whole section on the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition website that you can go to for different ways that you can compost at home. But I just wanted to share, these are a variety of different types of bins. This is just a homemade bin somebody made in their backyard. There's what's called a geo bin, and this is one that's adjustable based on how much space you have for composting at home. And then this is a tumbler. They use this at some of the schools, but also in backyards. So these are all ways that we can be composting just clean fruits and vegetables in our own backyards and ending up having everything turned into this really, really valuable soil amendment. I think one of the things that's hard, this is my family's journey through time and composting. Not everybody has the same kind of space, the same kind of availability or time to take on composting. And so, we did a number of years of vermicomposting, which is worm composting, when we had a much smaller house, switched to having the space to do a backyard bin, but that only gets fresh fruit and vegetables. And so it doesn't help you manage your meat or bones or dairy. Any of those oily things can't go in your backyard bin. They can in some circumstances, but it's not really recommended. And so I had family that lived in the village of Oak Park. And so I would drive my bags of food scraps there for a while and just drop them in their bin. They got a little annoyed with that. So I actually bought into and shared a bin in that program. Worked for me because my kids were in school there and I was working there. But then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden I needed a way that I could do this easily from home. And at that point, Urban Canopy had started providing service in my municipality. If you're in the northern suburbs, you'll see a lot of collective resource composting. In the south side of Chicago, you'll see the Urban Canopy. And then Waste Not, their area is expanding all the time. So you need to go check out there. And then Block Bins is mostly in the city now, but expanding to other communities. These are all either drop-off areas for compost or container swaps. So this is a 5-gallon bucket in the picture at the very end. I bring this up just to show you that there are so many different ways that residents can get involved in composting food scraps in their own backyard or having them sent off to be commercially composted. And when you talk about that commercial or centralized composting that was on the refed slide, that's really where, you know, you sort out all your food scraps, they get hauled to a compost facility where they get processed in large windrows, and then the finished compost gets sold as that soil amendment. Right now in Illinois, there are over 70 municipalities that offer some form of residential collection program. This is a huge jump from when I talked to Go Green Illinois a year ago. This has been more and more municipalities have this written into their contract. It'd be really interesting, though, to know as you guys find out whether it's offered in your municipality or not. It may be written into the contract, but there may not be anybody that's advertising about it or educating and engaging residents to take on composting. And this is where the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition has a wealth of resources to help with this. And I think that's where we're really stalling in Illinois. It's a huge part of the solution to the climate crisis. We've built it into hauler contracts. So for many people, they could be putting their food scraps in with their yard waste right now, and it could be being hauled away. But we have so many people that don't know that that's even an option and available. So just to give you an example, there are one-pagers that are available on the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition website that you can download and use as you educate. I've put together some information that, like, I'm happy to help if any of you are working with a municipality and want to know what kind of service your hauler offers. This information is specific for a group called the Cross Community Climate Collaborators that serve that area, and found out which ones they were, what kind of service they offered related to food scrap hauling. When you get the copy of the presentation, all of these links will be active. You'll be able to go on the website and find out more. And then each of these logos will take you not just to the website of the organization, but to the specific page on the website that has information on composting. So I just challenge everyone on this call to think about what is available in your community, who you need to talk to be able to share and encourage your neighbors and families to be able to start taking a part in being a solution to the climate crisis. And thank you very much for inviting me to be here and be a part of presenting today.
Jen, before Kim Stone introduces our next speaker, could you go back to your second to last slide? I'd like to call everyone's attention to the spreadsheet that was on your second to last slide that shows what all the different communities are doing so that our leaders can look at that and compare what they're doing in their towns to those around them. Do you know the spreadsheet? It was in the lower
Yes.
right-hand corner of your slide.
Well, and I was actually going to share, I can just share this screen instead, so that you can see, can you see, are we on the IFSCC website now?
Yes.
Are you able to see that page?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a map of composting facilities in Illinois. And then this, I thought was the page where the spreadsheet was. But we have maps of which haulers are.
Yeah, the spreadsheet is what I want to make sure people know about.
So you can find out what's going on there. And then, yeah, apparently I was not on the right page. Well, here's another summary of it, but I'll pull it up and show you. There is, I think it may have been taken down temporarily because it was being updated.
Okay.
But it should be back up any day now. So it is a spreadsheet that shows every municipality in Illinois, what type of program is being offered. This is the same data, but there's even more. It tells you who the hauler is. It tells you whether the program is seasonal or year round, and how to access it. And that's all been updated within the last couple of weeks.
Okay. is there a URL that you could put in the chat for all of our members to use? Or since it's been taken down, there's no URL at this moment?
There should, if it's taken down, then there is no URL, but
Well, why don't you check
I
while
don't,
we, Walter?
I will find it and make sure it gets back up there.
Great.
Okay,
Okay, Kim,
thank you.
go ahead and introduce Walter.
Great, thank you, Jen. So Walter Willis is Executive Director of SWALCO, the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County, and has been there since 2007. He is a tremendous resource to all the municipalities in Lake County, and has been really instrumental in getting recycling programs and getting composting programs, and getting better contracts for waste hauling for all of us. He's also on the board of the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition. So I will leave it to Walter.
All right, thank you, Kim. Walter Willis, the Executive Director of the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County, also a founding member of the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition and a past chair. And I'm going to talk about what we've been doing up in Lake County with our municipalities and our programs and how we've gone about implementing those. So those are the topics. So this has been talked about. One of the things that we do for numerous years that Merlan Rampel kind of leads for our agency is the backyard compost option. It's definitely something that should be looked at in the toolbox for the fruits and vegetables, as Jen was talking about. So probably over the years, we've sold thousands and thousands of them. So I'm hoping they're all still out there and being used. Drop-offs. We had the very first drop-off in the village of Grays Lake after we had gotten the law changed to allow these, and that kind of opened the door for the big pumpkin smashes that we're having in those events. This is still going on in Grays Lake. We've had to add more carts. Overall, people are doing pretty well with the not a lot of contamination. We do have a second drop-off in Wakanda, and I know the city of Chicago is got a pretty robust drop-off starting. So drop-offs are always something that should be considered to get programs rolling, and even to stay once we have options at the curb. A lot of people don't have those options at the curb. So your next contract, if you got a public works yard, this is at the Grays Lake Public Works Yard. If you can get it in there into your hauling contract, which Grays Lake did with Waste Management, then you can get yourself a drop-off going relatively easily. So the ride-along program, which is most of those 70 communities have, and this is, I think I came up with this nickname, I'm not sure, but basically it was a way to interact with the haulers, and that's a service that SWALCO does. We help negotiate for our 43 municipal members and the county of Lake. We started saying, hey, if we can just put food waste or food scraps in along with the yard waste, could we get that without adding to the cost of that service? And for the most part, we were able to do that because we have a compost site in Lake County that is more than willing to accept that material. And so that really opened the door to our ride-along programs. We have about 25 communities that have those, but to the point that was made before, there's not a lot of participation, or it's hard to measure as well. So I focused on the access to programs. Now it's time to get people to engage with the programs. This is a listing of the various communities. You'll notice that we have 5 year-round now, Highland Park being the last one to join. Actually, I think we have 6. We have a couple of communities with the winter opt-in you see in Grays Lake and Tower Lakes, North Barrington. Typically what happens then is we have it under contract. The hauler will come in during those 4 months, the winter months, and offer the service every other month. And it's an opt-in, or every other week, and it's an opt-in service. So people have to enroll in it and pay for it, but it is there if you want to continue to compost. Year-round programs, my theory was, and still is, that the ride-along program would get people aware of the option of doing this with their materials and learning about compost and the circular economy with food waste and organics. And that would then get the municipal leaders to move towards the year-round program because people would want that access. And it's happening. But when you go from the bottom up with programs as opposed to policy top down, it takes time. But I'm proud to say that, Highwood and Lake Bluff started it off. Since then, Deerfield, Port Barrington, Highland Park, Avon Township is not a member, but they have a program. This is not an opt-in. Everybody pays. It's like recycling. You're paying for that service whether you use it or not. So that keeps costs down. Otherwise, you're looking at these opt-in programs in the winter, usually $12 to $15 a household a month. When you do the year-round programs, you're looking at anywhere from $5 to $8 a household a month. Again, the pressure is on to get more people to engage in these programs. Schools. We've done a lot of work in this area. 7 Generations Ahead helped us. Brightbeat, others we've hired. So we are going beyond the Earth Flag programs, which we've done historically, and getting more and more of the schools to engage. And we did recently add a couple in Grays Lake, so we still have momentum going in the school arena. Now, expansion. Infrastructure is key. We're blessed to have a compost site that has really been walking step in step with the Lake County communities in Swalco. And they made a significant investment in their facility in 2017. It's the largest one in Lake County. Our jail has had a program since 2018. It's very successful, going very well, and they cut their costs because of the program. And then we have 10 commercial franchises in Lake County where the communities hire one hauler to collect all the business material or waste and recycling and organics, just like with the residential where you have one hauler. So in all those contracts, we do have food scrap pricing, and we've tried to get and engage with the restaurants and grocery stores, et cetera, to take on these programs. But to be honest, our success has not been great. And I am very encouraged by some of the focused haulers like Waste Not, Collective Resource, Urban Canopy. That's their business model. That's what they want to do. I'm trying to get those types of companies into these types of programs because they're the ones that are really going to grow it for us, I believe. Key factors to expanding your programs: education. I've been at this for almost 40 years in the waste industry, and behavior change takes time, but I've seen a lot of progress in my 40 years. Infrastructure is always important. Government, we need to create markets. And I'll mention something real quick when I get to another slide on what's going on in Vermont. Consider the ride-along program. If you've got a compost site near your community that accepts the food waste and that's where the hauler is going, you can probably get that added into your contract fairly easily. Route density, et cetera, all these things are important. And that's why when you do a town-wide franchise, everybody getting to pay, if everybody starts to put the materials out, we'll see a lot greater success. What are the benefits of composting? In our last plan update, we did spend some time looking at a different lens. We don't want to just look at what our recycling rate is, but what are our programs doing vis-a-vis greenhouse gases? And where do we get the best bang for the buck? And our consultant did clearly point out that, one of the greatest opportunities for greenhouse gas savings is the food scraps. And so we are going to continue to be focused on this, as I say, the next frontier for our diversion programs. So Swalco, this is a lot of words on this slide, but Swalco has been very active in Springfield since we've formed the agency 30 years ago. And we work very closely with our legislators on a lot of different bills, extended producer responsibility being one, but Senator Adrian Johnson, who represents a part of Lake County, did introduce a bill this session, Senate Bill 2816. And that started a discussion with the senator. We reached out to her, had a meeting with the retail merchants, the Manufacturers Association, and the waste industry. Basically informed her that this is a complicated topic This is a huge paradigm shift. And so we're going to need to, make sure we do this right. And she is committed to working with us, SWALCO, on a bill next year. So that is something I will be bringing to the SWALCO board to see if they want to bring that into our policy for 2025. And I think the main thing is to start with markets, because as we grow markets, we can pull through more material. Had a very interesting conversation with Vermont, Jen Nelson and SGA and Illinois Food Scrap Composting Coalition are working with a couple of interns. We're doing some research that we hope to give to the senator to put her in a good position to be informed and to run some effective legislation in Illinois. The Vermont call was interesting. They have a state law for several years now where the large producers, usually your food processors and grocery stores that are producing a certain amount of food waste and are within a certain distance of a compost site, they must divert their material to compost. And then that legislation ratchets down and gets to smaller and smaller generators. Ultimately, it gets to the residential sector. Very illuminating discussion with Natasha Duarte. What they found out was that when they implemented their law, their food donation went up threefold. So it has a direct impact on getting food to a higher and better use. They actually put that into their statute, the new US EPA hierarchy. It's a mandate that you must look at it hierarchically before you manage your food waste. It also points to the fact that when we implement a law like this or try to pass a law like this, we're going to need grants, right? Not only for composting infrastructure, but for the food recovery organizations. They're going to need more refrigerated trucks. They're going to need more capacity. We also need depackaging equipment. I hadn't even thought of that. And whether you commingle depackage or material has to be depackaged with stuff that's already been depackaged. So it really brought a lot of information. But the bottom line is it's working in Vermont. And she said that over 70% of the people, when they were surveyed in Vermont, feel that there's a moral imperative to compost. We were kind of blown away by that number. They have a very strong mentality towards it. And municipalities are a huge buyer of compost in Vermont. And individual residents are huge buyers of compost in that state. So that was very important to learn. So that's my presentation, and I appreciate your attention.
Thank you, Walter. Beth, do you want to introduce the next speaker, and I will get everyone spotlighted?
Okay, great. So thank you, Walter. That was great. A lot of what Walter shared is handled the same way in Cook County. So it's relevant for most of us. I think some comments were the fact programs that you have to opt out of really are the way to go. When you have to opt in and pay more to do it, it's a real disincentive. So kudos to those communities like Highland Park that have done an opt out program. So what we now, some communities have a municipal curbside pickup program and other communities haven't taken that step yet. Or they have added a communal drop-off bins in addition to curbside in some cases. We want a quick overview of how this works in Skokie and Winnetka, about 3 minutes apiece. Lauren from Skokie, could you tell us how this works in Skokie, please? Thank you.
In Skokie, in May of 2023, they started a program where they had several different drop sites and they slowly added a few more. I asked the person who's in charge of overseeing it about it, and she said that they pick up compost from those drop sites about 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the site, and they have extra toters at Public Works just in case they need some. That most of them are full, but they'll pull any that are at least 50% full. There are a few that are clearly the busiest, and one is not really being used. She said that the tonnage from the buckets from Collective Resources, because they started a program also where if you sign up for the first year, you get a huge discount for the curbside pickup. which is not run through the village. And the tonnage is combined, but looking at year-over-year totals, she estimates about 150 tons from the drop sites just in fiscal year 23. They don't see any evidence of rats, even though some people claim that there were. They sent animal control, there's no evidence, and they have cameras on the Public Works site, and they've never seen a rat there. Squirrels, yes, rats, no. And a rough estimate is that there are about 900 to 1,000 households using the free toters. And she said basically that the drop-off program has been very easy to manage, and she would encourage other municipalities to do it, and that she and Brian Zimmerman in Evanston are doing a talk in June for Cook County to get the word out.
Wow, that is great. Thank you very much. So just to be clear, who is picking up the food? This is privately contracted with Collective Resource?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, great.
There's one other thing I want to say, which is that when they rolled this out, they rolled back the garbage pickup to once a week, and in a particular segment of the population, and I'm not going to say which one it is, but there was really organized resistance to it. And they would show up at Village Hall, and they sent out surveys with very leading questions, trying to get people to say they didn't like the fact that the garbage had been reduced. And they were trying to like they were sending pictures of maggots on the insides of their garbage bins to the Public Works director and everybody on the village board. Is pretty bad. But they've since kind of shut up about it because they realize they're not getting anywhere.
Well, that's interesting because the vast majority of our communities have once a week pickup, and it all seems to work just fine.
That's what we tried to tell them. But they insisted that the increase in rats was because of the change in the garbage pickup. And the Public Works director got up there and said that they were already seeing an increase of rats, and everybody's been having an increase of rats, regardless of what their garbage practices were, whether they changed, and that it was the mild back-to-back winters that were the result, or that were the cause of the increase in rats, and not the change in garbage pickup.
Yeah, it's interesting for everyone to realize is that the food is around anyway. It's just we're just sending it to a landfill as opposed to a composting facility. Okay, thank you, Lauren. So for any communities that may not be renegotiating a waste hauling contract for another 5 years, you could put in a drop-off program in your community starting literally in 2 weeks if you wanted to. So thank you for that report. Similarly, in Winnetka, that's what they set up as well. So with Liz Kunkel is going to give us a quick report from Winnetka, please.
Hi, thanks everyone. Sorry, I'm in the car. I'm driving to Springfield for IEC Zero Waste Lobby Day tomorrow. Please come down and join us in Springfield, where we're lobbying for a law that will help increase food scrap diversion and composting in large venues in the state. So super exciting. Let me know if you want more info. In Winnetka, we don't just have a drop-off program, but we don't have curbside pickup because our Public Works employees still pick up our garbage. So we're not a large enough customer to become a curbside option on the food scrap side. But so our Public Works department and our recycling hauler, which is Lakeshore Recycling Systems, came up with a very unique solution, which isn't just drop off, but it's partnering with other institutions in our community to create those drop off sites. So obviously everybody's had option to backyard composting forever. And that's one of the things we do in Go Green Winnetka is to try to increase awareness and education around that and some of those options, building on what Jen Nelson talked about in terms of containers and just like what works for you in your home. And for a lot of people, and for Winnetka, again, some people can do backyard, but because we couldn't do curbside easily, the first iteration that worked well for us are the container swap programs that Walter just mentioned that are a great complement to the curbside programs. And they just operate more as a concierge service. It can be weekly, it can be every other week, it can be every 4 weeks. And they just create a lot of flexibility for people who can't or don't want to compost in their backyard, whether they don't have one, they're in an apartment building, in a condo, they travel, whatever it is, they don't want to deal with it, whatever it is. In terms of the rat issues, real quick, I want to say I spoke with a city alderman a couple weeks ago who immediately raised the rat issue. And I responded the same way Beth did. It's the food that attracts the rats. The quicker we start turning it into compost, the less attractive it's going to be to rats. Start mixing it into compost and it won't be attractive to the varmints. So the in addition to the pickup services or the container swap services that Winnetka has, and we've had those available in the village since 2019. We use collective resource compost and waste not compost. Neither of those are official partnerships with the village, but we have information about those providers on the village website to make it easier for residents to connect with them directly. Those are also available for businesses, for institutions, like anybody in the village can take advantage of those container swap services. And then the drop-off sites that were started in the summer of 2022, which was as we were emerging from the pandemic, and Winnetka was renegotiating its contract with Lakeshore Recycling Systems for recycling services. It didn't just extend the contract for recycling, it expanded it to include these drop-off sites. And like I said, what's interesting is the village is partnering with different institutions. So the locations of these drop-off sites are primarily schools, many of whom had composted successfully pre-pandemic, which is why the village wanted to start with them. So we've got 3 or 4 elementary schools, a high school, a private school, K through 12 is looking at doing it. A Faith House is a drop-off site. And then I think the newest one was one the village added in about a year ago for a farmer's market over the summer at our train station in downtown Winnetka, but it became a permanent drop-off site, and nice because it's one of the only ones that's not connected to a school and truly open and clearly available to the public. So we will continue pursuing the drop-off model. I don't know if we'll ever go to curbside because I don't know if it'll work for us. So we're always going to be about those options that Jen, Nelson, and Walter were talking about. The last thing I want to say is what I really like about composting and food scrap and building on everything else that people are talking about is many people know about the book Drawdown, which lists the top 100 solutions to reverse and mitigate climate change. And of those top 100 solutions, removing food scraps from landfill is number 3 on the list of top 100. And then further down on the list, but still on the list, number 60 on the list is specifically composting those food scraps. So if you take those 2 steps to divert your food scraps and turn them into compost, you're hitting 2 of the top 100 things you can do, which again is the agency we have and why we're talking about this. So thank you so much.
Awesome. And even though you say you're on your way to Springfield, just so everyone else knows, you are pulled off safely and you're not driving
Totally.
right now.
Oh, I'm totally stopped. You can see the traffic whizzing by me.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to thank you so much, Liz. We're going to continue with Tommy Vaughn. He is representing another option, and that is the option of signing up with a private compost collection services. There are various different companies. We've heard from Collective Resource, Block Bins. Jen had some other companies, but for this program, we are giving Tommy Vaughn 3 to 5 minutes to tell you how that works. So Tommy Vaughn with Waste Not. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for having me. I think a lot of people went over some great points that I'll try my best to avoid being too redundant here, but I work for Waste Not Compost, which is a compost collection company here in Chicago. We're based in Chicago, but service most of Lake and Cook County. We do have services for homes, multi-unit buildings, and commercial businesses as well. But in my role here, I'm talking about our municipal agreements that we have. So I'm the manager of these municipal agreements in terms of reporting to the places that we work with, helping to grow participation. Over the last 10 months, we've gotten 5 municipal agreements with 5 different municipalities in the area: Evergreen Park, Lake Forest, Riverside, Morton Grove, and Glencoe. There is some differences to each of these, and I'm happy to talk, answer questions from anyone about these after the call. But to keep things brief, how these generally work is that the municipalities will reach out to the compost collectors in the area, solicit proposals. So proposals meaning, we'll submit pricing for, how much we will charge to service the area. As a waste hauler, density is a huge part of our costs. So the reason why these agreements are good for the customers and the residents is because with assurance that, we will be the only compost collection company in the area, and with a partnership with the municipality in which we are in newsletters, e-newsletters, promotion from municipalities, we know we'll have some sense of density, and we'll be able to pass along those savings to the residents themselves. So how they've worked in a few different areas, they'll solicit proposals. We'll sign an agreement with the municipality themselves. We'll start service within weeks. These are things that in Glencoe, we signed an agreement 2 weeks ago. We're already servicing new people this week. So they can happen pretty quickly. The municipality itself doesn't have to pay any money unless they are using our services at one of their municipal facilities. So it's often something that, it doesn't have a ton of resistance to, because you have this assurance that, people are opting into the service. I know that there was some mention of opt-out versus opt-in programs and the differences. We have seen a lot of success in the 5 municipalities that we work with the opt-in programs. We've seen a lot of people sign up for them. We've seen even in Glencoe, where they have a drop-off program, they have ride along with LRS. We still have a pretty significant amount of participation, even within a few weeks of signing an agreement there. So I think, the lessons there, options are good. These agreements can be really good for residents that are worried about cost, because they can keep costs down. I know that in all these 5 municipalities, our service is actually cheaper in those areas than it is in Chicago, where we're based as a company, because of these agreements. So that's often something that, is a big selling point without any extra cost added in on the municipal side of things. We are, Waste Not as a company is open to, taking these municipal contracts or municipal agreements in different areas around Illinois. Really, it's just about, getting those proposals, soliciting the proposals from the waste haulers, doing your own considerations in your municipality for which one you want to go with, and then going from there. There is a lot of there's levels of accountability with these agreements as well for service and support. So, we're agreeing with these municipalities on what days we're servicing. We are reporting to them on participation, how much waste we're diverting. We have, we're including information in their promotion, but also, there's a level of, on our end, of buy-in that we're going to invest in promoting and doing education to residents, that whether that be through attending public events where we're tabling and answering questions from people, or sending out direct mailers, or providing educational resources to schools and stuff. In terms of, how to get these going, I talk to a lot of different passionate residents on a weekly basis about, hey, I really want to start one. And I recently talked to someone like Palos Park, and they were really interested in starting one. And really, the main things I tell them is just to go to your elected officials in your municipality, tell them that you want to see this sort of service, share with them the other areas around that are doing similar programs, and try to share as many resources as possible. For us, it's really about just submitting these proposals to these municipalities. So if there is someone at your municipality that we can send a proposal to, we're always happy to do so. But also, we're involved in the IFSCC as well, and I'm always just happy to talk about ways of increasing participation. So I have an email here on the slide that you can reach out to if you want to start a conversation with me. But also, happy to answer questions at any time. But I hope that that covered everything that you wanted us to cover. There are other compost collection companies out there. And for us, it's really about having the opportunity to be compared with them. Let's submit proposals, see which one can come, which one your municipality wants to go with, and go from there. So that's
Awesome.
my turn.
Tommy, thank you so much. Municipalities sometimes move more slowly than private businesses. So this is a great option to look into, either directly or in, complement with your municipal services. So thank you very much, Tommy. Next, our wrap-up speaker is Becky Brodsky. She has been working in this field for probably at least a decade. We asked her to talk specifically about how you could go to your local school system, your public school system, or private schools to set up composting programs in your schools. And Becky's also going to be kind of a wrap up, because she's so knowledgeable about this whole topic. So Becky, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure. My screen is taking a second. So thank you. I'm happy to be here and talking specifically about schools. I've got a lot of information in this presentation, but I'm going to talk really quickly because I want to get it in. And the slides will be shared afterwards, so you will have all of the details to read more carefully if you're interested in starting a program in your school. So as Beth mentioned, I'm with 7 Generations Ahead, along with Jen Nelson, and I specifically work with the Zero Waste Schools program, and we work with schools around the Chicagoland area to help them reduce food waste, and we also focus a lot on plastic waste, and we do so through food recovery, source reduction, composting, and recycling. We're currently working with, we are grant funded, so we are currently working with schools funded to work with grant schools in Lake County, Chicago Public Schools, McHenry County, and a few communities in West Suburban Cook County. So here are some reasons that we believe it's really important to compost in schools. Of course, some of the environmental impacts have already been talked about, but specifically in schools, it really gives students something that they can do on a daily basis to combat climate change. We know a lot of kids have climate anxiety, so this is something very active that they can do every single day. It empowers them, also provides leadership opportunities, and there's a great opportunity there too to make curricular connections and make the lunchroom a place of learning. There are a couple options in schools they can do composting. There's on-site composting and then commercial composting. So on-site composting is just like what you would do in your backyard. They might have a bin on the school grounds, but only fruit and vegetable scraps can be collected. It is a great learning opportunity for students, but it is also more labor intensive. So most of the schools that we work with do commercial composting because you can divert a lot more with commercial composting. And it is also easier once it's in place, it's much easier for schools to manage. There are a handful of schools that actually do both. They might do fruit and vegetable scraps and collect maybe a couple days a week just the fruit and vegetable scraps, because the volume is so big, they wouldn't be able to collect it every single day, and most schools wouldn't have capacity. They wouldn't have a bin big enough to collect all of their fruit and vegetable scraps. So this is kind of a breakdown about how we work with schools and how we recommend that schools go about getting a program started. Bring the idea, the fact that you're interested in doing this to your administration. Build a zero waste team, and we recommend that everybody at all levels be involved, right? Like you want students involved, teachers, principals, food service staff, custodial staff. I mean, it really is a team effort. It's a communal effort. And in order to create a successful program long-term, you really need to make sure that everybody is on board. Figure out where you want to start. You don't just have to compost in your lunchroom every single day. You could start composting in the kitchen. You could start composting just school events and create that awareness before starting in the lunchroom. Research haulers, see what haulers are available in your area to pick up food scraps. It's super helpful, we have found, for administrators especially, to tour local schools that are already composting so they can see it in action. We found that it is incredibly motivating. If they can see how it's done and see how capable students are of doing it, see with their own two eyes that they can actually do it, they're much more likely to want to get this started at their own school. Then you would purchase your supplies, which are pretty minimal, the indoor bins and bags if you're using them. Education is key, and we have some resources on our website for that. And then, of course, implementation. Here's some just highlights, tips for success. Again, getting everybody at every level bought in. Systematizing the process at the district level is very helpful so that you're not reinventing the wheel every single time a school in the district wants to do it. Also, if you've got the administrative buy-in at the district level, it is very helpful. If you've got facilities involved, then they can help with custodial training, purchasing supplies, and then same thing with food service, working on training for their staff. And it just makes it easier to do. Starting with elementary schools, we find is much easier because those younger kids are more open to change. They get excited about it. They're also tend to be more, willing to follow and excited about following rules and just following this system that you set up. And then again, custodial and food service staff buy-in and involve them in the process because this greatly impacts their jobs. Ask them what they think, take their feedback when you're planning the logistical side of things is a really great idea. And then make sure that everybody is educated, not just students, but all of the staff, lunchroom staff, teachers. Again, it's a community effort. We want everybody, and it's a cultural shift for the whole school. So we don't see this just about, being about the students. It's really about the whole school. Creating a volunteer schedule, we definitely recommend, and I'll talk about this in a minute on another slide. Having student volunteers to monitor the sorting stations is really important to avoid contamination, to make sure that we only get food scraps, and if you are collecting compostable foodware. making sure that to avoid contamination, you've got to have people standing there, and involving students is a great way to do that. So create a schedule for those volunteers, posted in the lunchroom, and then conduct waste audits so you know you can gauge your success. These are some questions to ask your hauler, the haulers that you're calling about potentially picking up from your school. I won't go through all these, but these are just important things to keep in mind when talking to a hauler. Some ideas for education. Again, we have a video that goes through over the how and why of the process. We've got it on our website. Interactive games, we've started doing that a little bit more. The kids really like that, like a question about what goes where, and just kind of making it fun. Signage, not just on the bins, but on the walls in the lunchroom, around the school. And then just any other way that you can find to communicate with students is very helpful. And also periodic education, not just when you start, but throughout the year. And of course, very important at the beginning of the school year every year as well, working it into kindergarten orientation, things like that. So as I mentioned, monitoring, these are just some ideas of how to kind of obtain those student volunteers, how to find them. Again, you want something that you can make sure is going to happen on an ongoing basis. So it can't just rely on one teacher's classroom, right? What if that teacher leaves? What if they lose interest? Whatever. It needs to be something that can just be built into your school and how it operates. So these are just, again, some ideas of how you can make that happen. This is what a typical sorting station that we set up in school lunchrooms looks like. So you'll see the green, the 20-gallon green bin that we use to collect the food scraps, and it's lined with a BPI certified liner. And in this instance, those trays are compostable as well. So they're stacked and then they're placed into the green bin to be taken to the commercial compost facility along with the food scraps. Here's an example of a sign that's just for fruit and vegetable scraps. So this would be for on-site composting. And then here's an example of a sign for the commercial composting. So you can see all types of food scraps are accepted. And we like to highlight no plastic, because in school lunchrooms, unfortunately, there are lots of little tiny pieces of plastic, condiment packets, fork packet wrappers, chip bags that tend to make their way into the compost. And then here's just a little graphic of how it works. Very simple, right? You can collect maybe in an online bucket if you want, or into a lined container. And then outside this is in the lunchroom on the left, on the right is what's going to be outside in your dumpster area. So you will either have a toter, like the one you see on the left, that could be, depending on your hauler, they provide different size toters, or a dumpster. And the hauler will let you know whether or not they accept the food scraps in bags, and then they will come usually on a designated day once or twice a week to pick up your food scraps. And they will leave that container there. They'll just empty it out usually. That's how it works. So here's an example of a waste audit that we did with a school, a K-5 school of 1,000 students, and you can see the diversion rate in green of how much they were able to divert from the landfill in 1 day of lunch. So 44%, 257 pounds of food scraps. That's a lot of food scraps. There we go. And so I would be remiss if I did not mention food waste prevention, which is something when you're in there and you're composting and you do an audit, you become aware of everything that is being thrown out that doesn't need to be. So all of the perfectly edible food that could be recovered. So we really like to follow the food waste hierarchy when working with schools. And on the right is the EPA's new wasted food scale. And you can see that composting is kind of in the middle. So the ideal way to deal with food, if it's edible, is to prevent it, or sorry, not if it's edible, food in general is to prevent food waste and look at the source and why so much food waste is being created in the first place. So here's some things that we do when working with schools to prevent food waste. So before we get to that composting step, looking at offer versus serve, which is a method run by the USDA that says that you can, in all national school lunch programs, schools can elect to participate in this, and all high schools actually have to participate. 5 items have to be offered, but students only need to select 3 of those items, and 1 has to be a fruit or a vegetable. So that way, students are not being given all of the food. They actually have a choice. If they have a choice, they're more likely to eat that food. And then some other ideas are scheduling. And then a big one is share tables. So that's where items, packaged items or whole pieces of fruit from the school lunch can go if they're, the packaged items are not opened, and students can place items there and also take items if they would like more food. And then here are some resources. These are all available on our website, all about either composting and food waste reduction. And just the one I want to highlight is the Food Waste Reduction Toolkit for Illinois Schools that we created in collaboration with the Waste to Food Action Alliance. And it has a section in it on composting in schools specifically. And it has a really nice chart comparing on-site composting to commercial composting. So you can kind of weigh the benefits and see which option is best for your schools. And then it also has a whole kind of walk through lays out how you can start a program in your school and how to set up a sorting station, and all of that. Also has a section on share tables and other methods of recovering food. So that is my quick rundown. A lot of information in a very short time, but if anybody is interested in starting a commercial composting program in their school, or a share table, or anything working on food waste reduction, we would be more than happy to talk with you. And you feel free to reach out to me at becky@7generationsahead.org. And then I am going to stop sharing my screen. And then I guess I'm wrapping up. So I think, as we can see, there are a lot of options for composting in municipalities, which is great. And it's obviously, we can see it's a growing trend, but I think kind of the running theme is education and awareness. So we've got a lot of programs, but we need more people participating. So how can we do that? And I think as Go Green groups, that, we're perfect people to be doing that, to be spreading that message and making sure that everybody in our communities is aware of what is being offered and how to take advantage of what's being offered. And then if it isn't, how do you do it? And really, communicating with people in other communities that are doing it and finding out how they've got their program set up. And I think accessing that spreadsheet from the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition would be a really good place to start. See if your community is on there, if they already have a program, and then go from there, and then talk to your municipality about, check out what are they doing to advertise, what are they doing, how are they letting the community know about the program. So I think I got to wrap up from Beth.
Good. Thank you, Becky.
Sure.
We've got a few questions, so I want to just go to those very quickly. We just have a few minutes. Does anyone know what the impact of emissions from the transportation of compost is, both for drop-off sites and pickup programs versus the methane reduced? And I'm going to just try and take that question on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Becky and Walter and Jen. These things are going into the trash anyway. So if they're going into the trash, they're going to be transported somewhere. It's not going to cost more emissions to transport them to a compost facility than it's taking to transport them to the landfill. And methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So getting them out of the landfill where they produce methane is going to reduce emissions. But as Edith showed at the very beginning, the greenhouse gas emissions from this sector as a whole is very small. I know that Walter worked with Highland Park to reduce transportation emissions from trash hauling generally by getting us onto one contract, so there weren't trucks going all over the place from 3 different companies. I don't know if you want to say just a minute about that.
Yeah, I think you're right on with your comments there, Kim. But yeah, with the commercial franchising, we never quantified it, but it would be a nice exercise to do. But we definitely cut down on greenhouse gas emissions, and that 3rd truck is running around 8 months of the year anyway. Year-round programs, there would be an increase probably in CO, carbon dioxide, but the offset is got to be greater. But I don't have empirical data, unfortunately.
Thanks. Who
And-
conducts?
Oh, can I mention?
Yeah, go ahead,
Sorry.
Becky.
Real quick. And when working with schools, I think one thing, if you're going to be looking at adding composting, look at right sizing your hauling levels, because we've worked with schools where districts where they were getting pickups every single day needlessly. So adding a composting service is a great opportunity to look at hauling across the board anyway, and making sure that your service levels actually match your need.
So you can actually reduce trucks that way.
Yep.
Good point. Who conducts waste audits? Is that just something for municipalities and school districts and park districts, or is there a home version?
We have guides on our website. We have a home waste audit guide that we created, and then we also have a school waste audit guide that has the data collection form and how, exactly walks you through the whole process of how to do it. So it's on our, we can put the link in the chat.
Great, thanks. And then 2 other questions. Kim Modowski mentioned that food scraps are defined as garbage in the city code, and that has been a problem. I don't know if Kim, if you want to weigh in on that, or if anyone has a solution.
Now, even state statute says that. I think the solution is, people get all freaked out about putting food scraps in a separate container. It's going out in your cart mixed with waste right now. So I never did understand that, to be honest.
Yeah, if I could just chime in, many people in my community do compost their fruit and vegetable scraps. It was only when someone recently mentioned that they got cited for it that it became more of an issue, and more of us became aware that we've been breaking the law. So here I am on Zoom telling all of you I'm breaking the law for love of the earth. And so I just would love suggestions for what code we should be recommending to the village to make this an allowable thing. I think there is concern about rats, but maybe there are other villages who've been through this, and there are guidelines as far as what kind of container one must use for on-site composting. I mean, right now the rules are so ridiculous in terms of how far it has to be from your lot line and how far it has to be from the residence, that people who have these tiny lots, there's basically no room for it. So we just want to, okay, great. I see some people, if you're sharing things for that. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the question. That was something I was not aware of. And then somebody else asked about renters and condo owners being excluded from municipal compost programs. I know in Highland Park, we have a commercial contract and we have a residential contract, and those multi-unit buildings come under the commercial contract. So they can opt into compost, but they are not on the composting program by default, which all residences are. So they have to go usually to their condo associations or to their property managers to try and get onto those programs if they're interested. Liz, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thanks. Sorry, I'll stay off screen now. 2 things. One, on the HOA issue and making it harder sometimes. There was a bill that was introduced this year at the state. It did not pass, but I'll let you know if it gets reintroduced next year. But it basically would have created a right to compost and would prevent HOAs from making it more difficult for residents to install either compost systems or rainwater detention or collection systems. So that's one piece. And then I just wanted to mention in the city of Chicago, I know they're, looking at ordinances, and as Walter said, some of this is definitional at the state level. But I also wanted to mention at the city level that the drop-off model is also what the city of Chicago is following. For those of you, since many of us are in the suburbs, you may not be aware, but last fall, the city instituted 15 drop-off sites around the city. And they've added 2 more in the last 6 months. They have something like 4,600 households registered throughout the city and are increasing more every day. So again, just an FYI that drop-off model is another big one that's being utilized and will continue to be so. Thanks.
Thanks. And I think that drop-off model is something that works well for some of these multi-unit buildings where they don't necessarily have a space in a trash room or somewhere to keep that compost. So if they're able to just drop it off, that also gets around the problem of those buildings or to possibly not being in the same waste hauling contract and not having the same options. So thank you, Walter, and Becky and Liz and Lauren and Jen for speaking. Did I miss someone? I know we had lots of people speaking today. Thank you all for participating in the program, and thank you to Merlan, also from Swalco, for all of the comments she has been putting in the chat with more information for everybody. So take a look at that. We are going to transition to community
I had
reports.
a
If
couple
you've
of,
got, yep.
I have a couple of comments.
Okay.
We, Go Green Illinois, had a meeting about sustainable apartment and condo buildings. You can find it on the YouTube station or YouTube and search for Go Green Illinois. We had a segment on how to add composting to a condo and apartment buildings. It really helps if you keep the food out of garbage disposal systems. And a lot of buildings find that contracting with a private company is really easy, and it can cost about $2 or $3 per unit per month, and they have it just an opt-out. Everybody pays for it, and they have found that that's very, very useful. You also can contract with LRS if they're your hauler. Waste Management is not offering any food waste hauling. So if Waste Management is your company, that is definitely a problem. Kind of related to food scraps, these Go Green Reads is going to be next Monday on May 20th, and the topic is the secret life of groceries. So there are some issues about food waste in that book. Go Green Reads, 7 p.m. next Monday. You can find a link to it on the Go Green Winnetka website.
Hey, Beth, real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Liz Kay. Just wanted to mention, we just found out yesterday that the author of that book, The Secret Life of Groceries, is going to Zoom in and participate in our conversation. So it's going to be a really extra special conversation, and it's about food systems in general and supply issues. It's fascinating. I was sucked in the first paragraph. Please consider joining us on Monday. You'll love it. Thanks.
Right. And you could do it whether you've read the book or not.
Yeah, we don't
Okay.
care. And treat us like a podcast. Bye.
Kim, turning it back to you.
Thanks, Liz. Just one other thing. There's a couple of comments from Wendy from Oak Park about LRS and the organic waste pickup for your condo building. The way that we have pickup in Highland Park, we have LRS, and they will not pick up just for a few buildings. So if you have one building that wants to compost, that may be the issue. Since we have composting now for our entire community, they can fill the truck because they've got to take it pretty far in order to drop it off. So that makes it worth their while. And that may be part of the stumbling block that you have with your building. So I want to move on to community reports. If you have a report from your community, please just put the name of your community in the chat. And somebody also asked about the Go Green Reads meeting. Go to the Go Green Illinois website, gogreenillinois.org, and look at the calendar. It is there. All of these events that have been mentioned are listed, and events that I'm sure people are going to mention in a minute are listed. Beth, I don't know if you want to mention the Oak Park District field trip. I want to share my screen and show everybody something that our intern created, which is phenomenal. Our intern Karen, who couldn't be here today on the meeting, has put together a spreadsheet with all of the successes that people have shared with us from various Go Green groups. And she has put it into a format that is based on the Greenest Region Compact and the Regional Climate Action Plan formats, where it's by environmental topic. I don't know if everyone can see this. But we've got air, climate change, energy, habitat, health, take action, transportation, waste reduction, and water as the categories. And then listed here are programs that various different Go Green groups have done. And then listed here are what Go Green groups have done each of the programs. So we will at some point be able to get this up on the website. If you have not sent us a list of successes and accomplishments from your group, please do so, so that we can add them to the list. There are also spreadsheets. There's other tabs on this spreadsheet that have the successes of various different groups. So those are not all populated yet. Just trying to find one that is. But that's sort of the backup document for the main document. So that shows the greener Glenview, for example. And I think this is going to be really helpful to provide ideas to people, to new groups, especially for things that they can do. We had a field trip to Oak Park District. Beth, do you want to mention?
Yes, when we had our program on sustainable park districts, people were very interested to hear the incredible sustainable efforts that are being done at the Park District of Oak Park. And so they invited us down. We had people from about 8 or 10 communities there. It's quite astonishing. We're talking to them about how important it is for the Illinois Parks and Recreation Association to help every park district in the state to follow the lead of park districts like Oak Park. They have solar on 11 different buildings. Most park districts haven't put it on a single building because it's hard. Well, Oak Park has figured out how to do it, and hopefully through the state association, they can share that information. What people got really excited about is that Oak Park designed a solar truck for all of their land care equipment. And so while it sits in the baking sun, while they go from park to park to park, they are charging whipper choppers, blowers, trimmers from flexible solar panels on top of the truck. Glenview heard about it, went to see it, copied it, and they have theirs in operation. Wilmette heard about it. We are in the process of creating ours. You can't buy those, you have to make them. But if your park district is saying they cannot transition to electric equipment because of the charging issue, refer them please to the Park District of Oak Park. That was a fun tour and a really great example of how we can share and do better by sharing best practices with each other.
You know, one of the things that they mentioned that I want to add to what you said is they were talking about net zero buildings versus using the passive house standard. And whereas net zero means you can put renewables on so that your total emissions are zero, you still might be wasting energy, and using the passive house standard instead to make buildings airtight and as efficient as possible means that you can put smaller arrays of solar panels or, you know, smaller amounts of renewable energy into those buildings and make a bigger impact by, or a bigger benefit, I guess, not impact, a smaller impact, a bigger benefit by having a lower energy consumption building. So are there groups that want to report on what's going on, successes, things that are challenging? Beth?
Okay, I'll take the lead really fast. Go Green just had our 10th annual native plant sale. We've sold 22,000 native plants. We sell them at $6 a plant, which is super affordable. And yet we made over $4,000 in our sale. So if your community is not doing a native plant sale, I encourage you to think about it. It's a total win-win. Also, we have a summer intern here. You've heard me before. Interns are fabulous. If you don't have a summer intern, there are people in your community that would really like to work with you. I encourage you all. We have an intern description that would make it easy for you to start. Contact me if you want a copy of that. We have, also sustainable yard tours. Summer's a great time for that. If your community does not have a sustainable yard tour to really show people how to do better with their yard care, you can do this with one house. It doesn't have to be a big deal. We encourage you to do your own sustainable yard tour this summer. Okay, that's all I'll say, though there's more going on.
Thanks. I'm going to call on Seema and then Morton Grove and Glen Ellen and then Highland Park.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Beck. Thanks, Beth. Sorry, I wanted to go first because I have to leave in a few minutes, so I apologize to jump the line. But just quickly wanted to give an update on what's happening within our community. So on Earth Day, we had a competition in our middle school between grades. And this was actually initiated by our student green team. With our help, they wanted to have a competition to see which grade has the least amount of overall waste. So now that we have the composting and recycling program in the schools, they're starting to think about reducing first versus composting and recycling. So that was during Earth Week. We were excited about that. I also wanted to put a plug in for International Compost Awareness Week for next year. And I'm hoping that Jenny and Merline can talk more about this in a little bit, but we had, at least I'll talk about Vernon Hills. We had a number of amazing programs that we participated in. There was the compost give back that SWACO paid for our village to give compost back to the community. We tabled at the give back, and we had so many people stop by, and we talked to them about food waste, about the municipal curbside pickup program. It was really great, really successful. So something other communities can do next year. We had our libraries participate as well, and our libraries did a book display and resources, so which was the bare minimum, but just to get people starting to look at books, kids look at books about compost. And the third one is a compost cafe, and I'm going to leave that to hopefully Merlan or Jenny to talk about the compost cafe. That was an amazing program. The last thing I'll say is also a plug maybe for tomorrow, for next year, is that we're participating in IEC Zero Waste Lobby Day, which is tomorrow. And we're going to talk about plastic reduction bills, which is banning foam and single-use plastic bags. It would be great. We have a number of the Go Green groups joining this year, but it'd be great just to have other groups join as well moving forward. And the last thing I'll say is I'm looking for some help, maybe support, some discussion on deposit return laws for beverage containers. It's a bill that the Coalition for Plastic Reduction has been working on, trying to move forward in Illinois. And this is basically to have a deposit on beverage containers and get them back and increase the recycling. And there's a huge pushback from municipalities on this particular legislation. So we all here have contacts with our municipal governments. I'm hoping that I can get some great minds to talk and see how we can get this in front of municipal governments and see how we can come to some type of agreement. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks. Morton Grove.
Hi, thanks. Just real quick, we are working with the village to get a tree ordinance passed. And in 2 days, on Thursday at 2 p.m., our library is hosting the Value of Trees. Somebody from Chicago Regional Tree Initiative is going to be talking. And so if anybody wants to attend, you can also attend virtually. Some of our village administrators are going to be there. So we're hoping to get a good showing for this. And then secondly, we're going to have our Sustainability Expo again on Saturday, September 14th. It's free for exhibitors. So if you know anybody who would like to participate, contact the village. Again, it's free, and it's a nice way to get your message out. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I'm sure you know that there are a lot of really good tree ordinances in a lot of our communities that you can use as examples, particularly Wilmette and Glenview at Highland Park. So Glenn Allen was next. Liz, I see you have your hand up, and I've got you on my list. But Glenn Allen, Jacqueline.
Hi. So Go Green Glen Ellen has awarded our first 2 grants, and both of them have to do with events in the community. So the first one we did was for our Downtown Alliance, had a beer crawl throughout the downtown to a number of businesses, and we sponsored these green, hopefully you can see because my background's blurred, these little glass tasting mugs, and they came with this little lanyard. So people loved these mugs, and we said when we were handing them out that we sponsored this so that people could drink out of glass instead of drinking out of plastic cups at these 10 different businesses throughout the afternoon. And then we also collected them at the end of the event if people didn't want them, so we could reuse them for a future event. So we made the logo, like it has our logo and then just like a basic Glen Ellen with a heart. So we made it like an evergreen logo that could be reused at, any event in Glen Ellen. It could even be used for kids. There's no reference to drinking or a date or anything. So, but people really liked it. And then related, all of our grants seem to have to do with with drinking, but our Chamber of Commerce hosts the Taste of Glen Ellen in August. It's like a big community carnival. And last year we handled collecting aluminum cans for recycling. It was the first time aluminum had ever been recycled at this event, and we recycled 360 pounds of aluminum basically in the 20 hours that the event was on. So this year we're doing that again. And then we also secured a donation of aluminum water bottles instead of plastic water bottles. And then we used a grant to purchase aluminum cups instead of plastic cups for beer. So every single beverage container that's going to be used at the Taste of Glen Ellen this year will be aluminum, which is infinitely recyclable. So, and there's about 20,000 people that attend this event. So we're really excited about that. So just sometimes sustainability feels like a drag, and we're trying our best to make it fun and engage the community kind of at different points.
Excellent. Thank you. Jenny.
Hi, from Highland Park. We had a busy April, like all of us. We did a trivia event with Chicago Trivia guys. So we heard them and they created a whole Earth Day trivia. And that was more just of a social event because we educate a lot and we just, again, wanted to have fun. So that was with a local local bar, and had a good turnout. And then we did our EV show, which Kim set up a ton of it, which was awesome because normally my husband does that. So I had a break from that. But it was in conjunction with our city's Arbor Day event. And that's always a very well attended event. And there's a lot of families and they have different things there. So I think that it was great to get a different crowd. And the city has a huge, they reach a lot more people than we do. So some people just stumbled upon the EV show and were really excited by it. Some people actually didn't know about Arbor Day, which was surprising. But so we really liked that. And there was a lot of space, but we also kind of lucked out on weather because the following day was not great. So we'll have to see next year where we can do that. And then we had a compost giveaway, thanks to Swalco. Last year, Swalco donated the whole load. This year, I emailed the city and I said, can we cost share on this so other communities can get some compost? And they did. And I believe it is in the budget now every year. My goal is to get it fully covered by our city every year and someday have a twice a year, but things to come. So we would just like to focus on more social events. I think it was fun and, it's just keep it light and successful. And then we will be planning our sustainable garden tour soon in late July, which was so much fun last year. And we're going to do a different area of town. So trying to see new neighbors. And I think that's about it.
Okay, thanks. Liz from Des Plaines. You're on mute.
Hello. So it was a slow start to get Go Green Des Plaines rolling for a couple of years, but this year it has come into full bloom. KT Peterson took the lead in the president role, and in addition to doing the Earth Day compost mandala, which was getting everybody hands-on interested in what the tools they were using that they could compost, that was at the Park District. We also had our first Sustainability Fest. Beth Drucker was one of our panelists on stage. We had 4 panelists and 12 exhibitors. About 100 local people showed up. We're already making plans for next year, and gave out native plants, compost bins, an outdoor compost bin, and indoor kitchen compost bins as door prizes. Our email list burst through the seams, and we're planning on Taste of Des Plaines. We're going to be giving, letting children plant sunflower seeds so they can take them home and taste a native plant. And then also have recipes for each are invasive, like garlic, mustard, etc. and we're planning on a sustainable yard tour in August.
Excellent, thank you. Going gangbusters. We've got two more, Oak Park and Park Ridge. So Oak Park, and then I've got a couple of quick announcements at the end.
Hi, Wendy Greenhouse from Oak Park Climate Action Network, and we've been busy with a lot of things, but one of the big pushes recently has been to start a program called Climate Coaches. The Oak Park's Climate Action Plan, which was passed by our village board in the summer of 2022, called for the establishment of a one-stop shop for technical assistance for residents who wanted to make their buildings more sustainable. And then Oak Park we lost our sustainability director. The position's still open, and I put the information about it in the chat early in the meeting. And meanwhile, Oak Park Climate Action Network, which is a volunteer group of citizens, decided to step up and create our own climate coaching program. And it's basically a bunch of us volunteers with expertise and experience in everything from installing a heat pump to installing solar panels, to getting on community solar, to buying and figuring out how to charge an EV, sustainable gardening, all those areas where people can make a difference in their individual homes and their transportation. And there's a sign up page on our website, opcan.org. And you list the areas where you have questions or you need help, and you have a 30-minute free consultation with somebody who can talk about their personal experience and answer a lot of basic questions and kind of hold your hand as you start to plan your process of doing whatever it is that you plan to do. And we've had a terrific response to this, outreach to people all over town with questions about everything from what's involved in switching to induction cooking, to I want to make my property, less prone to flooding. And we've had inquiries actually from surrounding communities as well, like Berwyn and River Forest. So we have to decide whether we're available to people outside that area or not. But it's been great. It's a partnership with the Village of Oak Park. We're doing all the work, but the village is helping us publicize this. They're not endorsing it. We are not endorsing any particular companies or contractors. Although we do have on our website, opcan.org, a list of local contractors, people who do electrification, install level 2 EV chargers in your home, whatever, with whom we have various members of OPCAN have had personal experience. So that's another resource that we offer as well. So we're very pleased with the rollout of the climate coaches. It was supposed to be a 6-month program with the village, but I have a feeling it's going to continue as Oak Park continues to wait for a sustainability director to be in place. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. That's such a great program. We've got Park Ridge.
Hi there. We hosted, I think, our 4th One Earth Film Festival meeting movie this year, and it was a bit of a scramble, but we found a local church. The Pickwick is in the process of new management. So that was really fun. We did our native plant sale. We have plants and shrubs, and we made about $5,000. And we will be selling the remains at our green drinks next week. So that's exciting. We are making progress in our schools on composting. They've had composting for years, but it's not really working very well. And we've had some grassroots organizing from parents in the district, not necessarily from Go Green, but headed up by a Go Green person. And they are making progress on getting that more unified approach to composting across the schools. And we're going to do our first sustainable yard walk July 14th. So, and it was fun to see some Go Green Des Plaines people at the movie. So, and it's really exciting to hear what you all are doing. So.
Great, thanks, Cindy. I know there's other people who have signed up, but we're going to wait a second to give those reports. I want to mention a couple things. A lot of new website posts are on the Go Green Illinois website that our intern Karen has created. So take a look there. There's a lot of new content that is on there now, and that will be going up shortly. And feel free to take those posts and put them into your own newsletters and onto your own materials. I want to mention that the City of Highland Park is looking at putting together the group that used to be known as CONSEC, the Coalition of North Suburban Environmental Commissioners, which this group was initially based on. And that was a collaborative kind of regional effort where environmental commissioners from different communities would meet informally and talk with each other about what they were doing. The Highland Park Sustainability Advisory Group is interested in pulling that group back together. So if you have a Sustainability Commission, Environmental Commission, Natural Resources Commission, any of those sorts of groups in town that are under your municipal government, if you could reach out to me and connect me with those folks, that would be really helpful. Our next meeting is July 9th at 1 o'clock on Zoom. If you're not on our email list, you will not get the information about signing up. So be sure to go to our website and sign up if you're not on there already. We do not yet have a topic. If you have ideas for a topic, feel free to email those to Beth and I. There's a contact us form on the website, or you can email us at info@gogreenillinois.org. If people want to stay on another couple of minutes, it's almost 3. Riverwoods and Glenview had both said that they had some reports. So I will turn it over to Riverwoods.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so actually in January, we did our second Talking Trash webinar with Swalco, and it was specifically on composting. So very nice that we're participating and making sure we're educating our community. We also, Riverwoods Preservation Council, just recently created a task force to participate in the sustainability and action plans. So we're moving forward on that. Something we're surprised that we haven't been doing community-wide. So we're happy. We are going to do our garage sale. That's our form of recycling, because many of our homes do not live on streets, normal streets, so you can't close off and have a typical garage sale. So we encourage residents to participate at one location at Village Hall, and that'll be on August 10th. And the last thing is our community is certainly concerned. We have a Deerfield Road expansion project that's going on and probably will happen in 2025, 2026. And we're really concerned about losing a lot of native trees. But one resident said nobody's really addressing the native perennials that are coming up. So our group solicited a lot of the residents to take a walk down Deerfield Road and identify and locate native perennials that are coming up now. So we have about 45 different varieties, and we are going to try to transplant them and save them. So there's our project.
Wow. Well, if you need help with that plant rescue, feel free to let us all know or post it to the Go Green Illinois website, and I'm sure others will show up to help. Glenview. Is Glenview still on? If not, Beth had some more.
Okay, well, with that, it's 3 o'clock, and we do try to end the meeting on time. Thank you for all spending the time to learn about ways to establish or enhance composting programs in your community. As you can see, we can all be doing more, especially in our schools, our multi-residential condo and apartment buildings. And if your community is not providing curbside pickup, that's something you could work on. There's a lot to do in this area, and it really makes a difference. Each and every one of us produces food waste every day. So again, Becky was saying we need to try to reduce the amount, but anything that we can't avoid really should be food composted. So with that, it's 3:01. Thank you, all of you, for signing in and for all the good work you're doing all over Chicagoland. We'll see you in 2 months. Thanks so much. End the recording.